Welcome to Network Your Future. Throughout this mini-series, we've been deploying and of course configuring our very own virtual Palo Alto firewall inside of AWS. At the end of last video, we did some verifications to basically validate that those initial setups were successfully completed. But that's just part of the job. We've got a long way to go to meet each of those contract deliverables that we agreed to. Taking a look at this contract between Top Flight Security of the World and Network Your Future, we can see that the scope of work required the contractor to conduct a proof of concept for deploying a single virtual Palo Alto firewall in the client's AWS environment. And amongst those deliverables, we've successfully completed the initial deployment, setup, and configuration of that firewall. But now it's time to continue and move on towards these next two. So in today's video, we're going to focus on demonstrating how the Palo Alto virtual firewalls can successfully filter out traffic through their security policies. The proper permit deny rules in the order, the basic setup of those protocols will ensure that that takes place. So we've got a quick and easy use case to demonstrate that before moving on to threat prevention. And as you saw when we deployed the virtual firewall, we used the bundle 2, and that's because all the subscriptions, the basic firewall subscriptions and along with the VPN are available to us. So one of those is of course the threat prevention subscription. So we'll take a look at validating that and then configure it accordingly inside of the browser. But let's go ahead and hop on into the firewall without prolonging this. So first up, we need to demonstrate and think of a way to filter out traffic. So if we go back to our monitor tab, the default logs there, of course, is traffic. We can see that traffic is still successfully traversing our firewall, both inbound and outbound. So we can take a look there. But what we need to do is basically we have one real rule here. It's named basic rule, and we configure that to basically permit any traffic from any source destined to any destination zone or IP address. And of course, that action is allow. So we need to go ahead and shore this up a bit. So let's take a look at MobaX term. And what I did here was actually, before we get there, is by default that management plane is what's considered out of band. So we don't see that in the traffic logs. So I went ahead and for the outside security group, I added this proper entry for SSH, which looks just like the entry for our management security group for my IP address. And then in MobaX term, I made a separate local entry configured just the same as management, but of course the different IP address to the outside interface. So if we go ahead and double click on it there, we'll see that if we were to basically just sit here, we'll get logged in successfully because the username is entered and the private key is correct. So there we go. We can do the same commands through this interface. Nothing different about this. Same firewall. Same management plane there. But if we come back to our firewall and take a look again at monitor, let's filter this by the destination port. And we can actually see it right there. So we don't need to do the filtering, but it matches there on port 22. And of course we're permitting it. So what we're going to do is basically change this rule up. We'll allow this one temporarily to just permit HTTP and HTTPS. So let's go ahead and change the source. We'll keep the source and the address as any, destination same, but let's go to the service URL, and instead of any, we will basically select HTTPS. And we'll add HTTP as well, although our security groups don't have that. For our application, let's go ahead and select SSL. And so now we're basically removing any of the other ports And when we click OK, we don't need to change the allow. So SSH is not in one of those applications. So we'll create a rule. Actually, we'll demonstrate, cancel that, how we can just clone that rule. And we will rename it. Let's say temp deny SSH. We'll do the source any, destination any, application. We will make this SSH. And for this, we'll just put any, delete those two entries. Application default is fine as well. And we will basically deny. So let's go ahead and move that rule above, although it doesn't necessarily need to be. So now we have our very first rule in the evaluation order. It's going to basically deny any packets that come in that are destined to the application of SSH. Doesn't matter the source or destination. And again, that action is deny. And it'll permit HTTPS and HTTP so that we can stay logged into the management console. So now we need to push that rule. And this will be modified security rules to test traffic filtering. There we go. So we'll commit that change. And while that's committing, let's go ahead and bring up MobaX term. We'll make it a wee bit smaller while that's going on. See if we get kicked out, basically. All right, there we go. Let me move this box over here. And as we can see here, we got a network error there. Basically, our connection's been severed. And if we come back here, let's make sure that that test, yes, completed successfully. Always want to check that. The traffic logs again, we should be able to eyeball this, basically looking for this entry here, this deny entry there. So we have traffic filtering configured appropriately. And in the production environment, could potentially be hundreds, if not thousands of rules. But in this proof of concept, we're just demonstrating some of the basic functionalities for that deliverable that we're going to write, of course, into the report. So this basically satisfies that ask. So before we take a look at threat prevention, let's go ahead and change that policy back so that we can get back in. So we will basically delete this. For this rule, we'll go ahead and change it back to what it was. Modify this to any. Basically a wide open rule for this proof of concept. Delete that, check any, click OK, and we'll commit this change. All right, so while that's committing, let's go ahead and take a look at our device tab. We'll close this here. It'll still run in the background. We'll see our software populate, and 10.2.4 is the current version, but we need to take a look at our license real quick. And with that bundle 2 subscription, these are each of the types of license that we have, and we see threat prevention actually is available to provide each of these categories here. So let's click on dynamic updates and let's go ahead and refresh. We'll hit check now. And so let's go ahead and download and install, starting with antivirus. I'll take a look at the date, 9/17. We'll hit download. We'll install that package. Let's go ahead and click close, let the session refresh a bit, and let's click install, disable new apps and content update. Nah, we'll ignore that. So while that's installing, a cool feature as well about Palo Alto inside of their web console, same for software. If you need to do a software upgrade and you want to know what are the threats, the existing issues, what bugs were fixed, you can click on the release note beside each of those. While that's installing, we'll take a look here. And for the applications and threats that was just released, you get a bevy of information on basically the signatures that are new in that package, as well as some additional information on the CVE ID, the category, and so on and so forth. So from a security perspective, it's good to review and take a look, because there is the possibility, especially with applications, if a new app ID is there, that it could potentially block traffic on a production network. And so that's why you may want to review it. You saw the pop-up about not applying new app IDs, but going ahead and installing it. So for our basic proof of concept, it won't apply there, but that's the reason that pop-up prompt asks that. All right, and there we go. Both the antivirus as well as the applications and threat packages have been successfully installed. No commits needed for that. We'll come back and touch on the global protect when we get to that in the next video. Let's do a check now one more time, just to make sure there's nothing that came through here in the last few minutes. All right, so we're good to go there. So now what we need to do is actually go to our objects and our security profiles, and we can see here we'll create a security profile group for each of these categories once we take a look. But for antivirus, by default, these are the settings that we're going to keep. If we were to click it, we can see that for each of these different profiles, we're not actually able to edit the default, but we can copy them. You see this one's read only, and make the modifications. But if we needed to do an exception, we can basically, again, we cannot do this. We have to copy and modify it there. But a easier one to do is for example, the URL categories. These are pretty cool. If you click on this link here to check a URL category, we see that by default, this profile for URL filtering is going to block any website that's tagged by Palo Alto's engine that's abused drugs, adult. It's going to allow these other ones, block, command and control, etc. But if you want to see if a URL, or you have a question about what category does it have, you can actually enter it here. Let's just do guns.com. Not sure what that website looks like, but we saw that as a category. And if we go ahead and hit search, we'll see that the category that Palo Alto's engine has is weapons. It's a low risk. And if you ever think that it's improperly categorized by chance, you can hit a request change and fill out a form, and their team will definitely take a look, especially for newer websites that come along. So this is a pretty handy dandy tool when in doubt. But going back here, if for instance we needed to, for any of these profiles, modify something there, we can click on it. Let's clone. We'll hit OK, similar to what we did with our security policy. And now we can actually make modifications. So we can rename this to POC URL filtering. And so let's say for adult, we wanted to say allow on our category. We could change that. Let's come down to, let's say dating. Say we wanted to block that. We could just click block there, and then that would apply. Gambling is already blocked. Hacking is blocked. So we'll go ahead and test Let's see, sports. Let's block sports. Nobody should be doing that on the clock. And we'll click OK. So for each of these, we won't take a look at all of these profiles for file blocking, different types of extensions or file types, as you can see there, depending on if you want strict or basic. And likewise, you could take a copy of this and edit it as well. But we will go ahead and click security profile. We'll add this and we'll give it a name. We'll say POC underscore security profile. And now we get to choose basically each of these on the left, and most of them will be default. The only one that we modified to block sports was the URL. So we'll pick POC URL filtering, and you can kind of see how this is coming together now. All right, no data filtering profile. We don't have wildfire configured yet, but we'll hit default. And so now that we have our profile group created, we need to apply this to our security rules. We'll say rule singular because, again, we went back to this basic rule. And if we were to scroll over here, on that last screen when we saw the permit, the deny, the log at start or end, this is basically where you would do it. But there's a shortcut. We could just click here without going into it. We'll click group and then select the group that we just picked and click OK. And there's that icon for a security profile group. And just to demonstrate what I just kind of was saying, probably not in a good way, if we come to this last tab of actions, this profile setting is basically where we just did that shortcut selection from. So now we need to commit and save this. And we will put configured security profile group. And we'll hit commit. And so while that change is loading, let's go back and quickly just touch on something that I saw as well in the dynamic updates. These are dynamic because, again, instead of being static, one time you have to manually do it. They permit you to actually select whether you want to do this on a scheduled occurrence. We saw that the default for applications and threats is every Wednesday at 1:02. And it's download only. We can change that to download and install if we trust the app ID. Again, for our proof of concept, no worries there. But on a production environment, the security team definitely should probably take a look to make sure that there's nothing that's going to conflict there. We'll do daily time. We'll do 1:15 a.m. action again, download and install. We'll click OK. And then we'll do something similar for antivirus. We'll click daily. We'll do this one about 15 minutes later at 1:30. Download and install, and we'll click OK. And when we get again to global protect, the different client options as well, we'll do the same thing there. Although we won't keep this firewall running, we'll see that when we fire it up the next time, there should be a few more packages ready, and it'll go ahead and run that in the background since it missed its last update. So that should be it. Let's click on task to make sure that we commit it there. Okay, so the last change that we had did commit successfully. So now if we come to policy without even trying to go to a malicious website or monitor, apologies, and now we can click on our threat log. And we'll see if there's anything that by chance, since we are open to the internet, I'm pretty sure that there'll be some attempts that come through here in the next few minutes. URL filtering, again, nothing there. We don't have a production network, so it's just the SSH client in this firewall itself. But let's go ahead and get back into that instance. Again, here, Linux. And let's go to connect, endpoint. We'll select the endpoint that was created. And let's just do a few curl attempts. We'll go to a site that we know like an adult site, and we'll try to curl ESPN since we blocked that as well. And let's see what happens if we return anything. So let's go ahead and curl. Let's do www.espn.com and let's see what we got. All right, so we see right here that the web page we're trying to visit has been blocked in accordance with the company policy. Same if we try to go to an adult website. Let's do the hub. We should see that we get a very similar website in nature. And that's because we added those filters. Well, for adult website, that was the default, and we copied that over. But for ESPN, it was initially permitted, and we modified that. So if we come here to URL filtering, we'll see that the action was blocked. One's adult, one's sport. And if we click on the magnifying glass icon there for more details, then we get some more details there about the reason why. We'll again expand this. We see the time, start, stop, the package size in bytes, the rule, UUID, a category, and the URL. So just a wealth of information. So we knocked out 2 more deliverables today. Great job at doing that. And we've got just a few more to go before we basically meet our contract deliverables and deliver that final report. But I want to thank each and every one of you again today for rocking in here with me today. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give it a like. And I hope to catch each and every one of you on the next video. But until next time, stay safe, take care of yourselves. Peace.